pledge. Thank you. Before we start, I was nicely reminded too, because I had just learned this yesterday. Red Creek lost a teacher, has passed, a retired teacher, thank you. A retired teacher, yes, for many years here at Red Creek, Bob Monroe, math teacher, wrestling coach, jovial in the teacher's room, great spirit, and so unfortunately he has passed, and I don't know any particulars about what the arrangements might be, but I think I want to acknowledge on behalf of the board and anybody else, because some of you here had them as students, as I did, as a student, or as a teacher, you're a student. If you have anything that you would like to add on behalf of your experience with Mr. Monroe.
Not without crying, so.
Not without crying.
Right.
I understand, yes. So I think we send his family the best in terms of their, through their grieving process. Thank you. We have some people, Mr. McDonald, that just came in. I don't know if we want to give them the opportunity to sign or not. Here, you want this? Oh, is there? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. We're at public forum. I'd like to be able to welcome anybody that has signed up to be able to speak. I've got, on this particular sheet, I have one speaker that has indicated. So Sandra Burton, if you would, please.
Good evening.
Let's tap that and let's make sure. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you want me to talk into it?
Please.
Better tilt it down a little bit. If you didn't notice, I'm vertically challenged.
There you go.
I would like to thank you for the opportunity to address the board and the superintendent this evening. Being a resident and a taxpayer of this district, I must say that I was appalled to hear of the recent actions in regards to the hiring of 2 new bus drivers at a rate that not only is substantially higher than the contract, but also substantially higher than a large majority of your bus drivers. You have sent a message extremely loud and clear that this administration does not value the longevity and commitment of our current drivers. The administration and the board have the backing of the community to take measure to recruit new drivers, but I somehow don't think that a slap in the face to the current drivers is what they had in mind. I realize that the current contract is up for negotiation, but that doesn't mitigate the disparity you have willfully created. You all should be ashamed and embarrassed by creating an extremely volatile situation among the drivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. So we do not have any other persons that have acknowledged the will or the desire to speak. So with that, we will move out of or move away from a public forum and into our meeting minutes. We're at the minutes for April 6th. Do I have a motion for approval for the minutes? Mr. Utes, I have a second. Mrs. Allen? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay. We, on the financial side, and forgive me, I've got to use my glasses, getting to that point. We don't have a treasurer's report for this month nor a warrant. So we move down to unfinished business. I'd like to invite, and I don't, he's somewhere here. There he is. Mr. Bonanno wanted the opportunity to do a follow-up for us with regard to Science Olympiad. So I think he's brought along a few people that will help give us the essence of what that meant to them. Thank you, Mr. Badano.
Okay. Dr. Corey, members of the Board of Education, all in attendance in person and virtual tonight. Thank you for this opportunity to have our Red Creek Science Olympiad students share their experiences with you this evening. Speaking on behalf of the Science Department, we're extremely proud of the Olympiad achievements this year. Tonight behind me, we have 3 students who will independently give you a taste of what it's like to be in their respective positions and an idea on the expectations they had as they prepared for competition. I'm done. It's now my turn. Doesn't matter.
So I'm Patrick Boyle. I participated in a few of the Science Olympiad events. One of the events was cell biology, which was an event that was primarily a written test, which I had to have a knowledge of cytology and cellular biochemistry, which included a long list of topics, including knowing facts about proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids, knowing about organelle functions, different types of cells, cellular communication, photosynthesis, cellular respiration, and other biochemical pathways, as well as more practical topics maybe that are like such as cancer and maybe the natural means against preventing cancer. I also had to be familiar with how to perform different labs procedures that could include working with a microscope or indicator solutions to test for the presence of the proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, or nucleic acids. And I also had to be familiar with other lab procedures that I might not have been able to perform, but I still had to know, such as gram staining and gel electrophoresis. I also participated in another event called Wi-Fi Lab, which part of the event was to build an antenna that improved the Wi-Fi signal, which I have brought tonight. It's a simple coil because it's an antenna design known as an helical antenna. There was a lot of challenges with building this, particularly finding the supplies because the electronics type supplies for this were just hard to find. I also struggled with building it as our first one that we brought to the regional competition did not work. And just other challenges such that like the reader getting interfered by other networks and just other factors, because interestingly enough, human tissue interferes with the Wi-Fi connection. I also had to learn about physics topics for a written test relating to electricity and waves, which, like all studying, it takes a lot of time. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for letting me talk today and share my experiences. So for Science Olympiad this year, I had to do something that was basically completely new for me, as last year was just online. I did multiple building projects this year for Science Olympiad. 3 of my favorite projects that are over there are seeing my trajectory machine, my aircraft I built, and my bridge, which is in the tow. It's hard to see out. So these projects take a lot of trial and error to get these things down to actually work how you want them to do. And it was great to practice everything, experiment. It took a lot of time, but it was worth the effort of putting it through and trying to work in these things. As a whole, it was a great experience, a learning curve for me. It's my first year really doing Science Olympiad. And I have to say thank you to all of our coaches that did it this year, and thank you to the board for allowing us to do this.
Hello, I'm Madeline Clark. I'm a senior. I've been doing this for 7 years now. I participated in 5 events this year. The highlights of which I would consider to be the Rocks and Minerals event, which is a testing event. All of them were testing events, so it requires a lot of study. But Rocks and Minerals in particular requires you to know a lot of properties of rocks and minerals. So you can identify them in like 2-minute station intervals and stuff. So Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask, just so we get a feel, what grade levels are you?
We're both sophomores,
So,
and she's a senior.
so we'll see the sophomores again.
Yep.
We hope and support you for another year and continue on a tradition here that's supported by fine staff to make it all happen. So thank you for coming tonight very much. Okay, I think Dr. Corey's got a little update for us that we need to acknowledge and discuss as a board.
Yeah, first I'd like to just thank Mr. Bonanno and his team and the students who participated, both Mrs. Hinman. Hello, there you go. All right, so we attended the event at Lemoyne, and it was fantastic seeing our students participate in such a large group, and there were really, really significant schools that attended, and everybody did a fantastic job. So we're very proud of our Red Creek students, and nice job. Okay. Check? Yeah. Moving on to, we're cutting out.
Cut
Do
it
you
out.
want one of ours?
What's that?
Do you want one of ours?
Yeah, maybe.
It could be human tissue.
That's what I just thought.
Patrick, do you
Patrick,
have
can
your
you
coil?
come up and
that I
Fix
can-
it.
All right. Okay, that's better. All right. So every year we have an election for the BOCES budget vote, and also the board members or candidates for board for the BOCES. So what you have in front of you is just the ballot that they are proposing to us, and you have a couple bios. Joseph McNamara, who is, has board experience at Seneca Falls, and also Philip Rose, who's been serving on the Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES board. There are actually 3 open positions and 2 candidates at this time. And what we wanted to talk about tonight is if we can fit in a special meeting on the 27th. It should be a very quick meeting to vote on what you have in front of you. You do have a copy of the budget, or the proposed budget, in the back as well, and should have a copy of the bios in front of you.
Tissue. Hello. Dr. Corey just suggested the 27th, because we have to have a separate meeting, and if you recall, it's usually a 10-minute meeting, but we have to have an official separate meeting to do these. I think, did you say that it could actually, we could do this electronically, though? We could actually do a Zoom if that was too. Yeah. So we could do a Zoom, but it needs to be, as you notice on the bottom of this, it needs to be done, completed by April 28th. So if we met on the 27th, in whatever form you want to think about we want to do. Do we want to come in person on the 27th for a quick meeting to approve this or discuss and to vote on it? Or do we want to do a Zoom?
Aren't CSEA negotiations, isn't the 27th the date that's being tossed around for that as well? So maybe take that into consideration.
Yeah, what time is that? What, remind me of the time?
Yep.
4. So if we did it prior to that, good, thank you.
Prior or after, either
yeah.
one.
Because that, you know, what are our thoughts down there?
Prior to what?
It's a CSEA
What
negotiate. And,
So what time would we need to be here?
well, that meeting is at 4, so we either have to want to do this just before, like at 3:30, and get it done, knock it out then, or if we wanted to schedule it afterwards, as Mrs. Allen said. And it's hard to know kind of how long our time's going to be.
What time it would be hard to know the after time.
Right.
I'm flexible.
Do I hear any favor of a 3:30? Can that work? All we need is a quorum, actually.
I
Yep.
can't do it unless
I'll
it's
be
a
there.
Zoom.
Excuse me?
I can't do it unless it's a Zoom meeting.
Zoom meeting, okay. Several of us are gonna be there to start with on that particular day, for the, yeah. So might it be, if we make sure that we have gotta have at least a
If
quorum.
it's quick, yeah.
So, Mr. Utes, Mr. Curtis, myself, Mrs. Allen,
If I'm here already, I'll.
So we could set it up as a Zoom meeting and Zoom the people in the room
Yep.
who
Yep.
Mrs. Madigan is.
so let's plan it for 3:30 on that day. Thank you.
You'll send something out?
Yep. Good. There you go. Okay, thank you. 4:27, 3:30. All right, thank you. Given from our last meeting, we're gonna have just a final update of the board, or the school budget, because of any new information that they've received since our last meeting, so we can get the full picture now. So turn that over to Dr. Corey and Mr. McDonald.
Doing it now? Are we voting on this now?
No,
You're
not
just
voting.
presenting now?
Presenting
Okay.
now, yep. That's later, too.
Can we talk about it?
Want to start
Are
talking
we
about.
talking about it? Okay. This is your last chance.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We just wanted to go through our budget this evening between myself and Mr. McDonald. Our budget events coming up is the budget hearing on Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. We are going to be presenting the same information to you this evening. Budget vote, Tuesday, May 17th, 2022, from noon until 9 in the secondary school library. So we had several budget goals that we wanted to work on this year. Obviously, the sensitivity to the community's needs regarding inflation to recent events, not limited to, but including the pandemic, social unrest, and global conflict that all impact our community on a very local level. We wanted to maintain our existing student programming through this budget. Any additions to our staffing next year will not be taken out of the general budget, but they would be through ESSER funds. So they would be more temporary staff at that point in time to bridge the gaps for some of our student needs. So maintain fiscal responsibility regarding programming and operations while meeting the needs of the district and the community, and also maintain long-term educational, financial, and operational planning. We wanted to maintain and manage the district's reserves to support long-term financial plan that will ensure stability for the future of Red Creek Central School District. So our budget highlights, this allows for a 3.24% tax levy increase from the 2021-22 to the 22-23 school year. 3.24 equals an increase in the tax levy of $151,353. So the proposed budget includes the 3.24% tax levy increase, and that allows us to go for a vote for simple majority and provide the necessary resources to the district to maintain the district's budget goals.
All right, what we're showing you here on this slide, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see percent increase. And what we've wanted to show is if it was a 0%, 0.5%, 1, all the way down to 4.5%. On the left-hand side is the current levy. The next column over would be the dollar amount increase of the levy at the amount on the right-hand side, and the proposed levy if we were to go out to what was on the right-hand column.
So a 1% increase, Mr. McDonald, equates to about $46,759, correct?
Yes. The next slide, what we're doing here is we're taking the data that we currently have and applying it to a hypothetical $100,000 house, what the levy would be. Now, Do understand that with this data, we could not use the equalization rates that we would normally use because they haven't come out yet. So the equalization rates that I've used are last year's, so these numbers are not exact, but it'll give you somewhat of an idea as to what the rates would be. And if I don't step in front of it. On the left-hand side, you'll see the different towns. It's Conquest, Sterling, Victory, Butler, and Wolcott. The next column is the current year's levy. The next column is the 22-23 proposed levy at 3.24%. Just to give you an example, at 3.24% for Conquest, there is a $39.40 difference in the total taxes for a $100,000 house. And then on the far right, what we've done is if the tax levy had stayed at 2%, we wanted to show you what that difference would have been to the current levy, and that for Conquest is $24.34. And finally, our budget highlights. 21-22 budget, $23,702,538. Our proposed budget for 22-23 is $24,181,814. Our proposed increase is $479,276, giving us a budget-to-budget increase of only 2.02%. A lot of these increases were due to various things that we've had to deal with so far. Increased costs in fuel, electricity, a lot of the commodities that other districts are also dealing with. With the negotiations going on, as was mentioned earlier, we had to budget in our potential salary increases. And finally, the district is looking at a healthcare increase of 21.9%.
So on the revenue side, our total tax levy increase, again, is 3.24%, which is an increase of $151,353. So our total tax levy is projected to be $4.8 million, just over $4.8 million, so 4,827,214. And we are proposing to use appropriated fund balance of $817,672. And also using $445,000 of our reserves. So as you know, our reserves could be things like our bus reserves. And a total appropriated fund balance and reserve combination of $1.2 million. Here you see, I think if you can see it, you see a three-part budget. So you have the administrative budget, the program budget, and the capital budget. On the bottom, you can see that the administrative portion of our budget is about 9.9%, so 10% of our budget is administrative costs. Administrative costs could be administrator salaries, administrative assistant salaries, Board of Education expenses, trainings. There's a lot of things that go into that category. Also, on the program side, that's the biggest portion of our budget, which is about 72% at this point. And that's staying flat from year to year. We typically are 10% on the administrative side, 72% on the program side, and another 18% over on the capital side. The capital side, again, around 18%, and that's looking at our facility, the operations of our facility. So, you know, it could be a contract with heating and cooling. It could be our fuel costs. It could be transportation pieces in there. So there's a lot of things that go into the capital side as well. And again, you know, what you're really looking for is that, you know, the program side is the majority of your expenditures. The program are the things that go to students, their teacher salaries, their materials and supplies, and there's a lot of things also that go into the programs that we bring into the school. So that's where we want the majority of our budget to be focused.
Can I go back to that for a moment? Yeah, it seems that people need to, as I look at that percentage that you pointed out at the bottom along each area, it's not a percentage of increase, it's the percentage of the budget. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, don't want people thinking that there's a 9.9% increase in administration. That's what the cost of doing business administratively is for the year.
Yeah, and those numbers really stay historically flat. So we have been 10% of our budget on the administrative side, around 70% of our budget on the program, and 18% on the capital side for several years.
All right, yesterday in the district office, we had slips of paper with each of the names of the Board of Education candidates, and the names were drawn with several witnesses to determine what the order was going to be on the ballot. We have the 6 names: Nancy J. Henner-Dingman, Lawrence E. Curtis, Stephanie L. Kaiser, Susan A. Cook, Elizabeth V. Decker, and Jolene B. Bliss. And this is the order that they are going to appear on the ballot in May.
So we do also have bus proposition. So we're planning on purchasing 2 buses, not to exceed $275,000. They are 2 66-passenger buses, and they are financed through the bus reserves, not the general fund. So you will see that on the ballot as well in May. So we just wanted to put some budget considerations up here just so that people understand some of the factors that go into developing a budget. The average new teacher salary and benefits is approximately $74,000. A 1% tax levy increase for our district is $46,759. The addition of a new position that does not currently exist in the budget would result in an increase of about 1.58% to the tax levy for each position added. So we had some alternative approaches. Alternative approach would be to increase the fund balance usage, which we don't believe right now is fiscally responsible. We have a long-term plan for the use of our fund balance, which is going to sustain our district on a longer term than where we are now. We also could, we had an insurance cost increase, I think Bill mentioned it earlier, of 21.9%, I think it was, which is approximately an addition of $600,000 to our budget, which is really, really significant. That's a significant impact to us. So we've been very creative on ways of trying to absorb that into our current budget without actually increasing as much as would typically be needed, which means that we are doing more with less, actually. So one of the things that we had anticipated was purchasing a truck. We have a fleet that we're working on for snow removal and maintenance and grounds, and we had to take that out of the budget for the year just to absorb some of that. And there's a lot of other things that we shifted around. But what we didn't touch was our academic programming for our students. We kept that solid. And a second alternative approach for adding instructional staff would result in a decrease in non-instructional staff, and that's really to a 3-to-1 rate. So, we're not anticipating doing that right now. This budget keeps and maintains everything that we currently have, and right now that is a high value to us. So, so that's why we are anticipating using the $800,000 of our fund balance to offset our expenditures to revenues at this point in time, but we have to be very cautious on how much of that we're using. I do want to mention that from the executive runs to the legislative runs, we did receive an increase of about $56,000, which is not an extensive percentage for us or amount for us. And what we did with that is we offset or reduce the use of our anticipated use of our fund balance for the next school year. Also on the ballot will be a proposition for the library. So the district ballot serves as a flow-through for the library funds for Fairhaven and Red Creek. This has no impact on the school budget. However, we do collect the money for the libraries and then disperse them back out. So the Red Creek Library has requested that we include a proposition this year for an additional amount of $12,000, so that their total amount equals $64,000. And questions?
Well, this is the time for questions.
So, in our packet, you broke down the budget summary of expenses by department for each function. and I'd like to discuss the line item, public information and services.
Sure.
You had told me that this amount, part of this amount was to cover a communications person, and that was going to be covered by ESSER funds. So just help me understand and help everyone listening to understand why that amount is in the budget if we're paying for it through ESSER funds.
So first of all, that code that you're looking at is actually a little bit larger than just a salary of a person. It's actually purchasing a coaster from BOCES, so it's a service. So it includes not only a salary for our communication specialists, but pretty much the entire department of community specialists at BOCES. So each one of the people who work there have different skill set. You know, Chris could be the expert on social media and web design, where we have another person access to other people that may be specialists on communications for crisis, or maybe reaching out to news and media, those types of things. So it's not just one salary that you're looking at. You're looking at a full COSER position. So almost like some schools reach out to their central business offices, and they purchase a service through central business office, which could include your accounts payable, your treasurer, and all those things. It's a similar structure that we have in place. The reason that we wanted to budget for it, so this came up last year, I think it was, where we felt the need, and the board had decided to move forward with it. At that point in time, we put it into our budget. And the reason we did that is because we want to sustain that for long-term planning. We can actually offset that with the ESSER funds for a year or two. When those ESSER funds dry up, that means that we now have a gap. So we're sustaining that program so that we're able to strategically plan for it. Anything you want to add to that?
That was it exactly. We're forward thinking as far as not creating a situation down the road where we then would have to come up with that money.
So in the proposed budget, I'm looking at the page B. So that, I'm sure, that is part of that expenditures general support, because I see how those two numbers tie into one another. But you said that the ESSER funds would offset this expense. So where on the proposed budget do I see the offset of ESSER funds to pay for
the ESSER
that
funds are
service?
not included into the general fund of the budget.
So why is the expense included in the budget if we're not paying for that through the general fund?
One of the options for us to do is to go back and change that process, right? So essentially that what we allocated for in the budget was identified as a budget item. The ESSER funds, we can actually backfill that, okay? So if we use that money, it gives us some additional fund balance moving forward.
So in other words, you're using fund balance to support that addition, but you're not planning on expending that fund balance portion to pay for that position because you're paying for it with ESSER funds. So wouldn't that, if it's unspent at the end of the year, wouldn't that just go back into fund balance?
Correct.
So why are we taking it out of fund balance now up front?
We couldn't guarantee at the time when we were developing the budget that we were going to be able to take it out of the ESSER funds, which is why we budgeted in that area.
So when did we get the approval through the ESSER funds to pay for this line item? I mean, I thought we just, last board meeting, we got a whole presentation on the ESSER funds. that
We talked about the things we were potentially going to be moving towards the end of the presentation, right? So one of the things in there is the purchase of that communication piece. That money has not expended out of the ESSER funds for the communication piece yet.
So basically what you're saying is we are going to reduce our fund balance to support this budget by the extra $113,300, the difference between last year's budget and this year's budget for that line item. And then at the end of the year, because we paid for that line item using ESSER funds, then our fund balance will go back up by $113,000. Is that what you're saying?
It could.
It could. What would be the circumstances that it would not?
If the money was needed someplace else in the budget, we've got it there to spend. A lot of the school budgets are built that way. But in this case, again, like I explained, I put it in that line item so that 2 years down the road, we don't have to come up with the 113, or maybe at that point, 120 to 125,000, because that's going to create a shock to the tax levy. What I try to do is I'm trying to keep everything on an even keel so that we don't have the peaks and the valleys.
So your intention is to create a sustainable position rather than one that we can only fund while we have the ESSER funds, is basically what you're saying.
That is correct. I'm thinking long-term.
When we originally started planning for this service, we did not have the use of ESSER funds at all. So the ESSER funds came in and we said that is something that we could possibly pay that out of at the time.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, so the Board of Education, and you're 100% right, and I think you were on the board at the time. So there was a very lengthy conversation about the importance of a communications specialist and process for long-term for our district. So that's what we're trying to identify, is that we're going to have a long-term plan for communication for this district.
Well, go ahead, Kate.
Maybe I'm missing this, so someone can explain it to me slowly without a lot of acronyms in it. But why is this position that we're possibly or probably going to fill with the ESSER funds any different than anything else that you presented last time? So for example, we talked about increasing staff for students. Why aren't we doing that with any possible position that we're going to backfill?
In this current budget?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, why is this one special, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so listen, we don't even have to take this out of the ESSER funds, to be honest with you. We could use those funds for something else. The reason we did it is because we found a way to be able to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand. There was quite a list up there, and I'm not going to be able to remember off the top of my head, but there was quite a list of possibilities to use for those ESSER funds. And I'm just wondering, I would agree that the communications piece was very important to the board at that time and probably would want to be a sustainable position. But I'm just wondering, why weren't other positions handled the same way? So if we decided that we really needed, for example, another AIS position in the middle school that we discussed, why isn't that handled the same way in the budget as?
We're planning on taking those directly out of the ESSER funds.
So that's the part I'm not understanding. So why? Why wouldn't you put it in here and then pay yourself back?
Because we're thinking long-term planning for the communications piece, because that's what the board had identified a year ago. They wanted that program in place for long-term planning. The other things that we will possibly take out of ESSER funds may be short-term planning. May not. We may absorb them into the budget moving forward. But right now, the things that we're planning on doing, so for example, we talked about learning centers, right, in hiring people for the learning center. We would propose to take that out of the ESSER funds, put that in place, fill those gaps, and then determine how are we going to do that. Are we going to absorb that into the budget for 2 years from now? Because right now we can't afford to hire those.
So this one is
extra
different
positions.
because it was discussed at length to become a long-term position.
It was a long-term
as
goal.
opposed to
Correct.
other possible staff.
Yes.
Okay.
These other ones came up in light of COVID and the funding sources that came from COVID.
This
where the communication piece did not. That had been in place for
Okay.
a longer period of time.
Yeah, go ahead.
This was discussed as part of meeting one of our board goals for the district, was to be able to communicate better with the community and, and receive feedback, both, really. Correct.
Yep.
So it was prior to even knowing we were gonna get ESSER funds, is what I'm saying, right?
That's
The way I
correct.
remember it.
Yes. Which is why it was developed into the budget, into the general fund. Other questions?
More questions?
I just think it's important to understand that, it's a takeout of fund balance right now and replenish later. I just think it's important. It's $113,000. And I think it's important to know that it's not in ESSER funds and in this budget. So I just really want the public to understand that there's $113,000 in this budget that is earmarked or designed more for long-term strategic planning purposes, and not that it will be spent this year through this budgeting process because we have ESSER funds to pay for it. I just think it's important that the public understand that.
And that's a great point, Mrs. Cook. I think that, the difference, as Kate's pointing out there, is that this is something that the district decided was a goal of the district, and it's something that you wanted to really support financially moving forward. I think we have a lot of things going on with our communication right now, and I think some really positive things are happening and also going to continue to happen, but we need to make sure that we support that moving forward. So that's a good point. Thank you. Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, there are ways to adjust that at this point in time, so yes. There's a lot of flexibility in there at this point. But we do have to stay within the parameters of the guidelines as well, so. But yes, there's a lot of moving parts in our ESSER funds and how we're gonna use them, and a lot of planning still going out. You will see some things that are directly linked to the students rolling out shortly. And you can see that, like our paper tutoring service that we've put in place, we've rolled that out to the high school, middle school. We're now trickling that down into the elementary school as well. So, and that's a use of those ESSER funds as well. Thank you. Great. Anybody else?
Any other questions regarding the budget? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McDonald and Dr. Corey. Okay. We're going to move into our areas of certified staff. And under certified staff, we have A, B, and C. Do I hear a motion for any or all, please?
A motion for
Mrs.
all of them.
All of them, Mrs. Cook, okay. Mrs. Allen, second, thank you. All right. I'm going to read them off. It's a 10-year appointment for Jason D. Wanick, a 10-year appointment for Nicole Stevenson, and an appointment of the 21st Century Chaperones for using those resources. So we have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Yes.
I just have a question as I was scrolling through this about C.
C, go ahead.
Is it normal that we're approving these chaperones after the event? Or are they for future events too?
No, typically we approve them prior, but this is for expenditures of funds for a group of students who attended River Dance, and it was kind of, it was actually Nancy over there. So she actually helped us out in collaboration with Hannibal, and we were working through the process to get chaperones that could help our students and go with our students. So we received some extra tickets, and we approved them and sent them. So typically we would do it prior.
Well, I'm just asking, so with these chaperones, exclusively for this event?
Yes,
Can
correct. Yes.
They can't be a chaperone
They,
again?
they could. Just for this particular event, we approve them as 21st
event?
century. Yes, per
Okay.
event.
Okay,
Just
Thank you.
because we ran it through the 21st century process.
gotcha.
Otherwise, if it was through the school, we could have just approved them as a
Okay.
chaperone.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on A, B, and C? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Thank you. Classified staff, we have just one, A. Do I have a motion? Yes, Mrs. Madigan, a second? Mr. Curtis, okay. That's an appointment status change for Jody L. Rogers. Anything that needs to be, no,
Just,
okay?
moving
So, probationary to permanent, that's, just a standard practice. So, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Thank you. All right. CSE recommendations, there are no CPSE recommendations. Motion, Mrs. Madigan, thank you. Second, Mr. Nodang. All right. Any discussion, anything?
Can we just have like 2 seconds to just glance over it really quick?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah. All right, take a gander, if you will. It's that time of year for a lot of reviews, right, and evaluations. There's some soft music going. So that department's been busy on this, seeing so these were since the last meeting.
Yeah, just,
Yes, okay, I've got,
What,
as you continue to look through, go ahead, Ms.
I just,
Madigan.
what does OHI mean? Can you say it one more time? Okay,
Other health,
yeah, so, can you maybe give me some more information on that?
you need a.
Is it just? So why do we use that classification?
That's,
There's just no other option? That's what we're using? Okay,
probably,
I could probably give you more information.
okay,
but that's kind of probably, there's a borders or parameters on terms or identification design.
I need the abbreviations broken out so I can understand.
We can actually do that for you.
Break out the abbreviations,
Yeah, no, I can
Okay.
give you
a cheat sheet,
A cheat sheet of abbreviations, there you go.
that would be fantastic.
Yeah, get to know all the numbers, all the players. All right, any concern, question? I think we had a motion, right, Mr. McDonald? We had a motion and a second. Okay. No more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Thank you. We have an acceptance on number 4 here. Acceptance of a donation from Dollar General Store in Red Creek, our new store up there, to the Kyler Elementary School. Anything you want to add, Judge Corey? No? It's nice to, local business and providing some of the resources. I see Mr. Taylor shaking his head. That's all a good thing, right? More books into their hands. So, any questions?
No, it's just nice to see they donated 100 books.
Yeah,
Which was nice.
it's very nice. All right. No questions? I didn't get a motion, did I, to accept? Need a motion, please. Mr. Utes, and a second, Mr. Nodine. Thank you. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain. Thank you. Okay. Number 5 is our proposed budget we just had presented. Do I have a motion? Oop. Oh, yeah. Yep. Now, given that, I should have him marking this. Well, let's give it to the clerk. He looks like he wants to be busy. Okay? This is a roll call vote. I'm going to have you do a roll call on that in a moment. Okay? Here, I'll read it out, though. I should read the whole proposal. So I'm going to read the resolution so that people that are tuning in can hear this as well. A proposed budget resolution for, excuse me, 2022-23. Whereas on March 23rd, 2022, the Board of Education of Red Creek Central District agreed on a tentative budget in the amount of $24,181,814 for the 22-23 school year. And whereas estimates of revenues for the 22-23 school year support a budget expenditure level of $24,181,814. Therefore, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education of Red Creek Central School District hereby approves the 2022-23 school year a proposed budget of the amount of $24,181,814. Said total budget is to be voted upon by the district voters on Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. Upon roll call, the following vote will be recorded, and I'm going to ask that Mr. McDonald do a roll call on this, and then, because this is required for this. So, do I have a motion first? Mr. Nodine, Mr. Utes, a second? Yes? Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. All right. Mr. McDonald, if you would proceed with the roll call?
Okay, for the vote, Bradford Dates,
Yes.
Kimberly Allen. Lawrence Curtis,
Yes.
Susan Cook,
Yes.
Catherine Madigan,
Yes.
Brian Nodine,
Yes.
Daryl Utes.
Yes.
With a vote of 7-0, it passes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. So that proposed budget is passed. That will go on for the vote on May 17th. Thank you. Okay, if you flip your page, approval for a property tax report card. Do I have a motion for this? Mr. Nodine, a second? Mrs. Cook, thank you. Okay. Anything you want to share with us? Nope? Pretty,
I've
Yeah.
never really seen something like this before. I'm just wondering if I could get a little bit of
Sure.
background on the, I know it's required reporting, but that's about all I know
Yeah.
about this.
Mr.
Shed a little
McDonald, would you want to
Brief
address
summary
that, please?
of what it does.
Thank you.
Sure. If this is approved tonight, what I'll be doing tomorrow is I will be going into the state portal and submitting this information. What it does is it provides the levy information. It also provides what the CPI is. And then in the middle, you'll see that it lists our adjusted restricted fund balance, which is our reserves and some of our encumbrances. The assigned appropriated fund balance, which is what we use in the budget in order to support the budget, the revenue. The adjusted unrestricted fund balance, I cannot read this.
It's tiny.
It's fine, Fred.
The unrestricted fund balance, I should put it up there. Unrestricted fund balance, and what that is, that's basically the 4%. And then at the bottom, which is, when this was first developed, was the main reason why they wanted this to go out to the public. It's our use of reserves. It lists what reserves we have in the district, what our current balance is as of March 31st, what our intended use, how much we plan on using for the, from each of the reserves, if any use at all, and then what the potential ending balance is if we used it. What I've done is I have, for potential use, I have actually used the dollar amount that we budgeted for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. McDonald while he's up there? No? Okay. So I'll let you get back so you can record. We have a motion and a second. No more discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? 7. Okay. On going down, you have the Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES Cooperative Bidding Group for 2022-23. This is an annual thing that gets into the kind of a consortium bidding, correct? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Do I have a motion to accept that? Mr. Utes? Yeah.
Okay.
Did I miss you?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, no, I was really just raising my hand
I'm
for a
sorry.
motion.
I turned my
You're
head.
fine.
Okay.
You go
and
left, Brad.
Mrs. Madigan seconded. Mr. Utes made the motion. Okay. Any discussion now? It's beneficial. It's a,
Yeah, there are several items that BOCES puts consortiums together for cooperative bidding, whether it be the garbage bags that we use, whether it be the rubber gloves, a lot of the PPE that we use, and there are some of the nurses' supplies. And what this does is that this will allow us to participate in any or all of the cooperative bids. We're actually buying a coaster to help support the individual that puts these cooperative bids out as a BOCES employee.
great. So there's money saved out of the whole thing. Yes. All right, so we had the motion and a second. Any discussion? Any concerns? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Pass. Thank you. All right, the adoption of the 2022-23 school calendar. Do I have a motion? Yeah,
Was
well-
the revision uploaded on the web? Correct.
Okay, thanks. All right, do we have a motion? Mrs. Madigan. And Mrs. Allen, thank you. All right, Ms. Allen seconded. All right, any discussion?
So are we going with the 3 superintendent's conference days, not 4, right? Okay.
Okay.
And do we follow BOCES every year?
We do. It's not always exact with BOCES because they have a different, we have multiple schools that they're dealing with, but we do follow their calendar.
I just see February, the spring break is what, first week of?
Feb-
Early, isn't it?
Yeah.
Third week? Third week?
Third week, yeah.
Well, but that's probably in line with BOCES, plus it's also taking into consideration that you're not taking a break right before the assessments, right?
Right.
February 20th. Well, it goes from February.
February or April?
February to April, you see what I'm saying? So we're gonna be
What?
February 20th to the 24th, but then they're gonna be off again April 3rd through the 7th.
Correct,
Mhm.
yeah.
So,
And that's directly in alignment with what the BOCES is doing.
And they're probably trying to avoid not doing a break right before the state assessments start on the 19th.
Mhm.
5 weeks apart, though.
So if you were off that week before that, you'd come back for 2 days. and
That's
have
happened in the
assessments.
past, which doesn't
Yeah, I
bode
mean,
well.
it's tough.
Yeah. So,
5 weeks apart, and then they got 10 weeks of school left, so.
Yep.
It just seems like it's condensed.
You want to take the break out? Or just send them to school all the time? Fine with me, Larry. You have my vote.
I'm sure people in the private sector would love to have those breaks.
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess I would like to see it longer apart, that's all for everybody, but.
Longer apart than, oh,
A
Yeah.
wider gap between
You know,
them.
'cause it's a long shot at the end of the year, is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
10 weeks towards
Yeah.
the end of the year, but
I don't know if if that's really our call, if we're trying to stay in alignment with BOCES because of the BOCES students going to, the BOCES students have to have hours, so.
Correct. Yeah,
you
so
know-
our BOCES students, as Sue was pointing out, they have a half day here and a half day over at BOCES. If they are off schedules, then they have a half day here during break, or half day over at BOCES during break when they're off here. So that's why we align our breaks.
I guess I would question why BOCES schedules it that way then.
You'll have to ask BOCES.
I think there's a place, they still need one more person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throw your hat in.
Okay, all right. So we had a motion and a second on that, okay? All right, any other discussion? All right, all in favor of adopting that?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Thank you. All right, correspondence.
Okay, so just starting off a little bit quickly here. Red Creek Central School District is proud to announce that we've received a 21st Century Grant. So for the next 5 years, we are getting $530,000 per year for Red Creek, which is significantly more than what we've received in the past.
You want to give them a little background?
Yeah, so basically what we've done, this year the grant parameters looked a little bit different than they had been in the past, and schools broke off and applied individually just because of parameters and kind of the construction of that. We had Mark Miller over at Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES and also Jay Roscup, who is working through our grant consortium. They both assisted in us in applying for that grant, and Red Creek was able to secure it, so we're really, really excited about that. That's a significant amount of programming for our community. So we'll be in the beginning phases of planning for that. And we'll be starting that very soon, but that certainly changes a lot of some of our anticipated needs, going through the end of the school year here. So I also want to mention that there will be a pancake breakfast this weekend on April 24th from 7:30 to 10:30, sponsored by the class of 2024. Mr. Bonanno was here earlier. He is the one who is spearheading that. It's $7 for adults, $5 for children and seniors. They'll be serving pancakes, sausage, eggs, and hash browns. So please come by and join us for that.
That's on the 24th?
24th, correct.
Oh, it's
Saturday, 23rd.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We also have a teacher recruitment open house coming up over at Harris Beach that Red Creek will be. I looked at Bill, and Bill and I and Julia will be attending on behalf of Red Creek, and we will be from 9 a.m. till 1 p.m. over at Harris Beach, and that's May 11th, 2022. I think you all have a copy of the flyer in your packet there. We have an early dismissal drill on Friday, April 22nd. It's just a dismissal for 15 minutes early. 2:15 for grades 6 through 12, and then 3:15 for our Kyler students. UPK will dismiss at 2:15 with our 6 through 12, as we normally do. District office update. So we were down there earlier today. Some of the products have been slowly coming in. They've installed the pass-through window at this point, and we're anticipating getting our flooring in pretty soon. We do not have the flooring material for the hallway yet, but they do have the materials for the actual offices and conference room. If you get a chance, head down there. It looks great. The conference room is going to be excellent for the board as well as other needs during the school day. Cabinet tops were replaced in the entire middle school, minus one. One of them came in damaged, so that will be replaced when we receive it. And in 2 of the classrooms in the elementary school. So that's really wrapping up phase 2 of our building project. I believe the building project was voted in 2016, so or 15 or 16, I think. So we're wrapping that up and should be complete at the very latest, the end of July. We're anticipating some materials being a challenge to come in. Summer school is up and running for our high school, middle school at this point in time. We have hired, not the district, but through BOCES, we have hired a principal and assistant principal. They have posted for the positions for the instructional staff, and they're moving forward and working through that. Again, this will be here in Red Creek. We have Raina, our high school principal, and Mr. Smiley over there. The assistant principal will be meeting with the principal, the summer school principal, I believe tomorrow at 10 o'clock to work through some of the process on that. And I think that's all. For the elementary summer school, we're just in the planning phase of that, so we'll be beginning to get you more information on that as we move through. And then you have some information from our administrative team. And I have one other thing that I want to share. So I received some prom information. So the theme for prom this year will be Fly Me to the Moon. It will be Saturday, May 21st from 7 to 10 over at Coloca State Winery in Fairhaven. Ticket sales are on sale Monday, April 25th through Friday, May 6th. The price of tickets are $50. And Mrs. Arnone is really spearheading that. The menu and the DJs. So they have Mystic Music with a photo booth. And they're having smoked barbecue chicken, homemade meatballs and sauce, macaroni and cheese, seasonal vegetables, fruit salad, and garlic bread. Can I take anyone order now?
Yeah, get lined up.
We will have a photo package that's offered by One Photography. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to Mrs. Arnone. And that's my updates.
Just want to go back so we, for people who are listening and putting a plug in, the Pancake Breakfast, what was the time? Time on that?
In the morning.
9 to noon. Oh, 7:30 to 10:30.
7:30 to 10:30.
Yep.
So that those that are listening got it right.
Yep.
I'll put it on my calendar.
All right. April 23rd.
April 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rice.
Yep.
By the way, I will say that the paint job in the in the new district office looks excellent. So thank you to Rice Painting, who are the contractors on the job.
Okay. Yes.
Sure.
Mr. Lang's report.
Yep.
The cable was pulled during break for vape detectors. We just go into a little more detail about what the vape detectors are in high school bathrooms.
Yeah. Mr. Lang, she's asking the question,
So-
in your report, talked about pulling the lines. Yeah, their function
Yeah,
is.
so their function, basically, they are sensors very similar to smoke detectors. When somebody vapes in a room, it will set off a sensor and actually send out an alert that someone is vaping in the room.
When did we get those?
We received them about a month ago.
And they're just in the high school?
Correct.
High
They're
school.
not installed in the middle school yet, though.
Yeah.
The installation in the high school was complete over April break, but they're not terminated yet, from my understanding. And then the middle school have not been installed, to my understanding.
And they're just in the bathrooms? Sorry.
Correct.
They're just in the bathrooms?
Yes, just in the bathrooms.
Thank you. And I also just, I know she's not here tonight, but I wanted to thank Mrs. Hinman for listing out the upcoming events. It's great to see everything,
Oh.
kind of a list form of what's upcoming.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you to Ms. Sinman and Mr. Smiley. So, any other questions on reports? Okay. We do have a couple of things in terms of a negotiation update and a personnel update for those items for executive session. So do I have a motion for executive session? Mrs. Allen, a second. Mr. Nodine. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Have a safe night home.